There is a plant that grows in the cracks of sidewalks, thrives in abandoned parking lots, and survives droughts that kill everything else. It produces more nutrition per square foot than lettuce. It costs nothing to maintain and replants itself forever. During the Great Depression, it kept millions of families alive when grocery stores stood empty and bread lines stretched for blocks. Then prosperity returned, and we forgot it. We did not stop growing it because it failed. We stopped because grocery chains and seed companies could not sell it. A plant that feeds without cost, spreads without permission, and requires no chemicals cannot generate profit, and what cannot be sold must be eliminated. This is the story of the weed that saved America during the Depression, then was hunted to near extinction by the industry it threatened. Before we open this story, if these ideas matter to you, the best way to preserve this knowledge is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with those who need to remember what we forgot. The Dust Bowl has turned the Great Plains into a wasteland. Crops die in fields that look like ash. Banks foreclose on farms that produced wheat for generations. In Oklahoma, a mother walks through her garden where nothing grows. The soil cracks beneath her feet. Corn stalks lie brown and brittle. Tomato plants shrivel to nothing. But in the cracks, something thrives. Low to the ground, succulent leaves spread in thick mats. Small yellow flowers dot the green. She knows this plant. Her mother called it verdolaga. Her grandmother cooked it in stews. She reaches down and pulls a handful. The stems are thick with moisture despite weeks without rain. This is purslane, Portulata oleracea, the succulent that grows where nothing else can. Families standing in bread lines supplemented their rations with foraged purslane. They found it growing in alleyways, vacant lots, the edges of railroad tracks. While industrial crops demanded water and failed, purslane stored moisture in its leaves like a desert plant. It survived. Immigrants already knew its value. Mediterranean families had eaten it for centuries. Greeks called it glistrida. Italians called it porcellana. Mexican families knew verdolaga as a staple green, sautéed with onions and peppers. When the Depression hit, that knowledge became survival. The nutrition was staggering. 100 grams of purslane contained more omega-3 fatty acids than most farmed fish. Vitamin A levels exceeded spinach. Vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, potassium flooded every cell. Iron and copper supported blood in bodies slowly starving, and it cost nothing. One patch produced pounds of edible greens every week. No planting, no watering, no care. Families harvested stems and leaves. New growth appeared within days. The plant regrew from fragments left in the soil. The taste was mild, slightly lemony, with a crisp texture when raw. Cooked, it softened like spinach. Families ate it in salads, boiled it with potatoes, mixed it into soups to stretch meat further. Indigenous peoples had known purslane long before European contact. Some tribes cultivated it deliberately. Others harvested wild patches that returned every summer. The knowledge was old, practical, passed through generations who understood that survival meant recognizing what the land offered freely. During the Depression, that ancient wisdom kept children alive when grocery stores stood empty and government aid ran out. The use was not isolated, it was systematic. The Works Progress Administration conducted garden surveys across thousands of Depression-era households. The records documented purslane use in cities from New York to Los Angeles. Families foraged it. They recognized its value. They ate it to survive. In 1933, the USDA published emergency food bulletins listing wild edibles. Purslane appeared alongside dandelion and lamb's quarters as recommended greens for families facing hunger. Agricultural extension offices distributed pamphlets showing how to identify and prepare it. The yields told the story. Purslane produced 4 to 6 harvests per growing season. Lettuce produced 1, maybe 2. Purslane required no irrigation. It thrived on rainfall alone, storing moisture in succulent leaves that survived weeks of drought. Lettuce demanded regular watering or it wilted and died. The cost difference was stark. Purslane cost nothing. It self-seeded. One plant became dozens the following year, without human intervention. Hybrid lettuce seeds required purchase every spring. 25 cents per packet in 1930s money. For families earning $15 per week, if they had work at all, that quarter mattered. The caloric density was modest. 100 grams of purslane contained only 20 calories. But the nutritional profile rivaled spinach. More vitamin A, more omega-3s, more minerals. It filled stomachs and nourished bodies, slowly starving on bread and potatoes. In the 1980s, oral history projects recorded testimonies from Depression survivors. Elderly men and women recalled the plant they called pigweed. They remembered harvesting it in empty lots. They remembered their mothers cooking it with whatever else could be found. Beans, if they had them. Onions. Salt pork, when meat was available. One woman in Ohio described eating purslane salad nearly every day for 2 summers. Raw leaves mixed with vinegar. It kept her family going when garden vegetables failed and store-bought food was impossible. The irony cut deep. When prosperity returned after World War II, families wanted to forget. Purslane reminded them of poverty, of helplessness, of years when survival meant eating weeds. They wanted store-bought food, clean packages, the promise that hunger would never return. But prosperity brought amnesia. The knowledge faded. The plant that saved millions became something to eliminate. The war ends. Victory gardens bloom across America. 20 million households grow their own food. Seed catalogs arrive in mailboxes thick with possibility. For a brief moment, purslane appears. Burpee lists it as a low-maintenance salad green. Agricultural Extension bulletins recommend it for beginner gardeners. It requires no special care, tolerates poor soil, and produces abundantly. Families plant it alongside tomatoes and beans. It spreads quickly, filling bare ground between rows. Gardeners harvest handfuls every few days. The leaves regrow without replanting. But a problem emerges. Purslane spreads without permission. One plant becomes 50. Fragments left in the soil sprout new growth. It jumps garden borders into lawns and flower beds. It reseeds itself aggressively. Seed companies notice. One purchase produces infinite plants, no recurring revenue. Customers buy purslane seeds once and never need to buy again. The business model collapses. Grocery chains notice too. Customers forage purslane from vacant lots instead of buying lettuce. A free alternative growing wild everywhere threatens produce sales. Chemical companies see a different threat. Purslane resists early herbicides. It survives applications of 2,4-D that kill broadleaf weeds. Its succulent leaves shed poisons. It thrives where spraying eliminates everything else. The response was coordinated. Agricultural extension agencies began shifting language. Bulletins that once called purslane nutritious now labeled it persistent. Universities that recommended it for victory gardens began teaching elimination techniques. By 1950, seed catalogs stopped listing purslane. The entry disappeared quietly. No explanation, just absence. Land-grant colleges updated curricula. Agricultural students learned to identify purslane as an enemy crop. Textbooks described it as difficult to control, noting its aggressive spread and resistance to management. The nutritional data vanished from educational materials. By 1960, purslane had transformed in official literature from Depression-era survival food to agricultural nuisance. The shift was complete. Not because it failed to nourish, because it succeeded without generating profit. By 1970, purslane was illegal in suburban America. Municipal weed ordinances classified it as noxious. City codes required property owners to remove it or face fines. In hundreds of towns across the country, the plant that saved families during the Depression became grounds for legal penalty. Homeowners associations enforced the ban aggressively. Violations brought fines ranging from $50 to $500. Repeat offenders faced liens on their property. The language was specific. Portulaca oleracea, listed by name alongside crabgrass and dandelion as prohibited vegetation. Land-grant universities reinforced the message. Agricultural programs taught purslane as enemy territory. Textbooks described it as difficult to control, persistent, spreading rapidly through gardens and cropland. Students learned elimination techniques. Cultivation methods disappeared from curriculum entirely. The nutritional data that appeared in the 1930s USDA bulletins vanished. New editions made no mention of omega-3 content, vitamin levels, or food value. Purslane existed only as a management problem. Chemical companies saw opportunity. Herbicide marketing campaigns featured purslane as the villain. Monsanto and Dow advertisements showed it choking lawns and gardens. The solution was always chemical: spray to eliminate, spray to control, spray to maintain property values. Community gardens banned it to maintain aesthetics. Garden plot rules prohibited plants that spread aggressively or reseed without permission. Purslane qualified as both. Violators lost their plots. The pattern was clear: cannot be owned, cannot be patented, cannot generate recurring profit, must be eliminated. The contrast was stark. Hybrid lettuce required seed purchases every spring, $4 per packet by the 1970s. It required fertilizer, pesticides when aphids arrived, and consistent watering. The entire supply chain profited: seed companies, chemical manufacturers, irrigation suppliers. Purslane required nothing. One fragment in the soil became a patch. That patch fed a family all summer: zero inputs, zero purchases, zero control points for extraction. What began as marketing became law. The depression weed that fed millions was now a crime to cultivate. But laws cannot change biology. In 1986, researchers at the University of Texas analyzed purslane's nutritional content. The findings shocked them. Purslane contained 300 to 400 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids per 100 grams, more than any other land plant tested, higher than many fish. 300 milligrams of omega-3 from a weed. The antioxidant profile was equally remarkable. Melatonin levels exceeded what researchers expected to find in any vegetable. Beta-carotene, vitamin E, glutathione. The concentrations rivaled or surpassed spinach, the gold standard for nutrient-dense greens. A 1998 study examined purslane's effect on blood sugar. Diabetic participants who consumed purslane regularly showed reduced glucose spikes after meals. The effect was measurable and consistent. Their bodies processed carbohydrates more efficiently. The mineral content told another story. Magnesium at 68 milligrams per 100 grams, potassium at 494 milligrams, calcium, iron, copper, zinc. Levels matching or exceeding cultivated greens that required irrigation, fertilizer, and pest management. Ecological studies in the 2000s revealed more. Purslane improved soil structure. Its roots broke compacted earth. When it died back in winter, it added organic matter. The soil underneath purslane patches tested richer in nitrogen and carbon than bare ground. The drought tolerance was extreme. Purslane survived 6 weeks without water. CAM photosynthesis allowed it to store moisture like a cactus. While other plants wilted and died, purslane remained green. A 2010 climate study measured yield under the water stress. Purslane produced reliable harvests with 1/10 the irrigation lettuce required, in desert conditions, in drought, in heat that killed conventional greens. Testimonials appeared in permaculture forums and alternative health circles. Diabetic patients reported stable glucose levels after adding purslane to their diets. Some reduced insulin requirements by half. Folk medicine validated by peer-reviewed research. The science was definitive. What depression families knew through necessity, researchers confirmed through analysis. Purslane was nutritionally superior, ecologically beneficial, resilient beyond measure. Yet suppression continued, because purslane had another problem. It wilted within hours of harvest. The grocery supply chain demands shelf life measured in days. Lettuce stays crisp for 7 to 10 days refrigerated. It survives transport from California fields to East Coast stores. It photographs well under fluorescent lights. It fits the system. Purslane wilts in 6 to 12 hours after cutting. The succulent leaves lose structure rapidly. By the time it reached a distribution center, it would be unmarketable. No amount of refrigeration extended the window enough to matter. Shipping was impossible. The plant bruised easily during transport. Stems broke, leaves compressed into mush. What arrived at destination looked nothing like what left the field. Marketing departments rejected it on site. Wilted purslane did not photograph well. Consumers wanted crisp, green, perfect. Purslane offered limp, irregular, strange. Mechanical harvest failed completely. Purslane grows prostrate, flat against the ground. Combine harvesters designed for upright crops missed it entirely. Specialized equipment would be required. Hand-picking was the only reliable method. Labor economics killed commercial viability. Hand harvest costs $15 to $20 per hour. Industrial lettuce harvesting costs 10 cents per pound using machines. The math did not work at scale. Packaging presented another barrier. Purslane stems grow in odd shapes and sizes. They do not fit standardized clamshells. No uniform appearance, no consistency batch to batch. Industrial agriculture demands uniformity, crops that ripen on schedule, harvest by machine, ship without damage, store for weeks, look identical under store lighting. Purslane refuses. Each plant grows differently. Maturity varies. Harvest requires judgment and care. Storage is measured in hours, not days. From a corporate perspective, purslane was unreliable, non-uniform, difficult. Code words for cannot be controlled. But climate revealed a different truth. February 2021, Texas. A polar freeze strikes. Temperatures plunge below zero for days. Industrial lettuce fields freeze solid. Crops die completely. Millions of dollars lost. Purslane survived under snow. When ice melted, it regrew. Summer 2022, California. Drought intensifies. Reservoirs drop to record lows. Irrigation restrictions tighten. Lettuce farms fail. Fields turn brown. Purslane thrived in abandoned lots. In sidewalk cracks. In vacant land no one watered. Green and productive, while industrial crops withered. The implication was unavoidable. When systems fail, purslane remains. When climate shifts beyond industrial tolerances, purslane adapts. Food security, not profit optimization. The pattern repeats. Amaranth. The Aztecs grew it as a staple grain, complete protein, drought-resistant, high yields. Spanish conquistadors banned it in the 1500s. They called it pagan. They burned fields. They executed farmers who cultivated it, not because it was poisonous, but because it enabled independence from colonial grain supplies. Lamb's quarters. The USDA listed it as a nutritious green in the 1930s, higher in calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, vitamin A levels that exceed kale. Now classified as a noxious weed in most states, agricultural extension offices teach elimination, not cultivation. Dandelion, every part edible. Leaves contain more vitamin A than spinach. Roots support liver function. Flowers make wine. Grows everywhere without care. Americans spray billions of dollars of herbicide annually to kill it. The lawn chemical industry depends on dandelion being perceived as an enemy. Stinging nettle, protein content rivals beans. Contains calcium, iron, vitamin K. Grows wild across temperate zones. Legally restricted in many counties. Classified as invasive despite being native in most of its range. The common thread runs clear. perennial or self-seeding, high nutrition, zero inputs required. Cannot be sold profitably. Studies confirmed what should be obvious. These wild plants outperform cultivated crops nutritionally. Researchers documented it. Universities buried the findings in obscure journals. Agricultural curriculum continued teaching elimination. The corporate seed industry generates $60 billion in annual revenue. The model requires farmers and gardeners to purchase seeds every year. Hybrids do not breed true. Saved seeds produce inferior plants. The cycle of dependence is engineered. Perennials break the model. One planting produces harvests indefinitely. No repeat customers, no recurring revenue, no control. The pattern is systematic. Crops that enable food sovereignty are redefined as weeds, pests, problems requiring industrial solutions, not because they fail to nourish, but because they succeed without generating profit. They call invasive what thrives without permission. Climate change is here. Droughts, heat waves, system shocks that break industrial agriculture. Monocrops were bred for stability, consistent weather, predictable rainfall, temperatures within narrow ranges. That stability is ending. In 2023, lettuce shortages struck supermarkets across the Southwest. Heat and drought killed crops in California's Salinas Valley. Prices doubled. Shelves sat empty for weeks. In 2024, spinach crop failures spread across major growing regions. Extreme weather made yields unreliable. Supply chains fractured. Purslane grew through it all, ignored in vacant lots, thriving in sidewalk cracks, producing nutrition where industrial systems failed. The plant was designed for chaos. Heat tolerance to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold tolerance to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Drought survival for 6 weeks without water. Poor soil, compacted earth, neglect. Purslane adapts. Modern resurgence is quiet but growing. Permaculture networks share propagation techniques. Foraging guides list purslane as priority harvest. Seed-saving communities distribute it despite legal restrictions. Many suburbs still ban it. Municipal codes still classify it as noxious. HOA enforcement continues, but the knowledge spreads. Plant 3 stems in spring, harvest pounds by summer. The plant regrows from fragments. One season produces seed for the next, forever. The families who survived the 1930s understood what we forgot. When systems collapse, perennials persist. When grocery stores empty, weeds save lives. Verdolaga, Pourpier, pigweed. The names changed across cultures and generations. Depression survivors called it salvation. Conquistadors called it rebellious. Modern corporations call it invasive. The plant does not care what we call it. It grows. Forgetting is not final. The knowledge waits in every crack in the pavement, in every vacant lot where purslane spreads green and unstoppable, in every gardener who plants it despite the laws, who harvests it despite the stigma. The system that erased purslane built fragility into every supply chain. Climate will test those chains until they break. When they do, purslane will still be there, growing free in the margins.